Ever feel like you're doing all the right things and still wondering why your body feels off? You eat well, you train hard, your labs say you're fine, but deep down you know something's slipping. You're not alone and you're not crazy. I'm Daniel Rasmussen, founder of Echelon Center for Longevity, and I've spent 2 decades helping high performers like you to reverse aging, reignite vitality, and finally get answers. On Unbreakable Vitality, we go upstream. We talk peptides, stem cells, precision diagnostic testing, reversing the age of your arteries, all the innovative science-based tools to take back your health span so that your next decades are your best yet. Because aging is real, but decline is optional.
Blood sugar could be sabotaging your brain, your arteries, your hormones, and your energy. Right under your nose, this is happening. While doctors say your labs look fine or it's under control. That's because the typical markers like A1C miss the daily chaos that's going on with glucose spikes and crashes. And those swings, they're aging your arteries, inflamming your brain, tanking your hormones, and they're giving you mitochondria, a panic attack. Blood sugar issues aren't just about diabetes. Even normal glucose swings can damage your arteries, accelerate brain aging, feed inflammation, wreck hormone balance, and crash your energy, all while your standard labs come back fine. This episode exposes how glucose variability is a silent longevity killer and what to do about it. Let's get into it. You don't need to be diabetic to have blood sugar problems. You just need stress, caffeine, and a breakfast bar. Let's set the record straight. You don't need to be a diabetic to have a blood sugar problem. This is what's pretending isn't actually a candy bar, a breakfast bar, right? It's actually a candy bar with a marketing degree. Most people think blood sugar only matters if you're insulin dependent or drinking Glucerna shakes. But here's the punchline. Your blood sugar could be sabotaging your brain, your arteries, your hormones, and your energy. Right under your nose, this is happening. While doctors say your labs look fine or it's under control. That's because the typical markers like A1C miss the daily chaos that's going on with glucose spikes and crashes. And those swings, they're aging your arteries, inflamming your brain, tanking your hormones, and they're giving you mitochondria, a panic attack. So in today's episode of Unbreakable Vitality, we're diving into the glucose trap, how even healthy people are silently being drained by unstable blood sugar, and what we can actually do at the Echelon Center to catch it, correct it, and turn it into one of your top longevity tools. Let's get into it. So key concept here is that glucose volatility, not just A1C, is what's wrecking your longevity. Let's take into consideration where most of your doctors don't, your arteries. They usually wait until you're 100% blocked and then they do something. They put a stent. Well, let's back it up 10, 20, 30 years. When you eat something that spikes your blood sugar, and especially if it's happening frequently, you're not just dealing with a sugar rush. You're aging your cardiovascular system, one glucose surge at a time. Think of one of those surges of glucose in your body as another layer of damage that's accumulating. Here's what's happening, a little more detail behind the scenes. Let's paint a picture. Every time glucose rises too quickly, your pancreas pumps out insulin to bring it back down. If this cycle happens over and over, think, bagels for breakfast, snacking all day long, dinner, then dessert. Your cells begin to ignore insulin's signal. That's insulin resistance. But insulin resistance doesn't just mean elevated glucose. It means inflammatory damage to the lining of your arteries, which are called the endothelium. Once that endothelium is inflamed and permeable, meaning little holes are punched in it by this inflammation, here comes oxidized LDL, cholesterol, your so-called bad cholesterol, sneaking through the gaps. Your immune system panics, sends in white blood cells, and boom, you are building plaque, layer by layer, year by year, decade by decade, glucose surge by glucose surge. And here's the kicker, that plaque doesn't wait until you're diabetic. It starts forming decades before. We see it in real time here at the Echelon Center when you use the heart threat scan, which is our carotid intermediate test, which is an ultrasound test that's way upstream from any calcium score test that you can get. It will catch plaque formation decades before a calcium score would. So if you want true upstream precision cutting edge diagnostics that for your cardiovascular system, then there's no parallel to the heart threat scan, carotid intima media test, CIMT. This CIMT ultrasound measures the thickness and stability of your carotid arteries and gives you an age based on the mean average of all the other Americans in the United States. And the patterns are clear. What we find is that clients with frequent glucose swings, and they're even with the normal A1C, they have accelerated vascular aging. Just a lady that we worked with probably about 7 years ago in an longevity program, and she was doing great. The last couple of years, I'm just catching up with her, with what she had told me over the last couple of years since COVID. She slowly, kind of sank back into old habits and had gained weight again. So I was like, well, she was reaching out because she was having more and more symptoms of fatigue, knee pain. She's having weight gain again and brain fog. I told her, let's get you in, do the blood work, and also let's get a heart threat scan. And what we saw shocked us. She had soft plaque formation in her arteries that was putting her in the 70th percentile group of her age group. And she's in her early 70s. So meaning she's 72. She's got the vascular age of an 87-year-old. Now, the last time we did her heart threat scan, she had reversed her age of her arteries by 3 years. So her arteries were 3 years younger than her actual chronological age. So it only took 2 to 3 years for all of that gain to be wiped out from not maintaining it. Can't tell you how important this is to become the healthy person that these things are just a part of your life. It is the crux of the issue. When you slide back into that old identity of the person that does the unhealthy things, has the insulin surges, has the sugar and glucose surges, and you rationalize that, oh, it's just, it's on occasion. It's not going to accumulate. I'm here to tell you it does. So clients with frequent glucose swings, typically even with normal A1C levels, have this accelerated vascular age. Their arteries are thicker, they're less flexible, their blood pressure starts going up, and often already showing early soft plaque forming, which is the most dangerous because the early plaque is when it has not been calcified yet. That's why a calcium score is way downstream. It's already looking at all the plaque that's already calcified in your arteries. That's after the fact. You want to get upstream and look at the soft plaque so you can start reversing that. Remember, soft plaque is the dangerous kind. That early plaque formation is the most likely to break off, float through the carotid artery up into the brain and cause a stroke or a heart attack. Silent killers. There's no sign. The first symptom of a blocked coronary artery is a heart attack. So, that plaque can rupture and cause a stroke or heart attack. This is the risk. And you could look like a perfectly healthy individual on the outside. Another one of our clients, a 51-year-old, so he's in his early 50s, same age as me, entrepreneur. He had a fasting glucose of 91, mildly elevated. I like to see it down in the mid 70s. And then his A1C was well below the 5.5. He had a 5.4, and he was told by his PCP that he was the picture perfect of health. But his heart threat scan, when we did it, showed vascular age of 63. So 12 years older than his actual chronological age. And we could see soft plaque formation at his bifurcation of the carotid artery. We ran CGM on him for 14 days, constant glucose monitor, and saw that his glucose was swinging from 80 to 160, and then back to 80, and then 160, and one time it got up to 220 multiple times per day. The fix for him is not a prescription. It was blood sugar stabilization through food timing, stress modulation, and resistance training. Without testing, how would we have known? Otherwise, it's just guesswork. Test, not guess. 6 months later, after going through and teaching him how to maintain his blood sugar at a nice steady level. We rescanned and his vascular age dropped by 7 years in 6 months just by getting his blood sugar regulation stabilized. So if you think glucose is only about energy or weight, think again. It's about vascular aging. It's about whether your arteries stay supple and oxygen rich or stiffen up into calcified risk zones. So we're going to take this sugar story upstairs to your brain now. Because if you've been blaming your brain fog on aging, maybe your blood sugar is the real plot twist. So why insulin resistance damages the endothelium? We're going to look at that a little more closely. And how glucose spikes oxidized LDL and triggers plaque formation that can be detected on a heart threat CIMT scan and vascular age connection. So let's take that little trip upstairs to the brain. You ever walk into a room and forget why you're there? Forget, how did I get here? What was I coming in for? Blame it on aging, getting older? That's a cute theory, but for many people, the real culprit is a breakfast that made their glucose spike like a theme park roller coaster. Glycemic variability, which is the fancy term for your blood sugar acting like it's on a trampoline, wreaks havoc on your cognitive clarity. Your brain runs on a steady supply of glucose, not too much, not too little. Just the Goldilocks zone is where it wants to be. But when you spike high and crash hard, that's when the lights flicker upstairs. Brain fog starts. That makes simple tasks feel like quantum physics. Irritability, that turns red lights into existential crisis. Anxiety, that's mysteriously worse right after lunch. Here's the kicker. When your glucose crashes, your body releases cortisol, stress hormone, and adrenaline to bring it back up, triggering symptoms that mimic anxiety and panic. Think of it like your brain sitting in the passenger seat while your blood sugar slams on the gas, then the brakes, then the gas, and again, nausea, dizziness, jitteriness, and not the fun espresso kind. But let's talk the long game now. I think you're getting the idea. Chronic blood sugar instability has been linked to early dementia and even Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease, I read a recent study, is now being called type 3 diabetes. Yikes. They're finally catching up. So when your neurons are swimming in excess glucose, it leads to oxidative stress, inflammation, and impaired plasticity. Translation, your memory and focus get worse and worse. Your processing slows down and your risk for neurodegeneration climbs precipitously. At the Echelon Center, we've used continuous glucose monitoring, CGMs, and we use also ketosis breath testing to track when your glucose is high, where's your mental clarity, and not just metabolic metrics. The data is just wild. We've had high-performing executives crash cognitively mid-afternoon like clockwork, only to find that their glucose dropped from 150 to 72 in under an hour. One client had a brain fog window from 2 to 4 p.m. daily. We adjusted his lunch macros, added post-meal walking, and gave him a dose of berberine. The result? Fog lifted. Productivity went up. Staff no longer feared meetings with him after lunch. The best part? You don't have to guess anymore. With wearables and your blood work, you can see in real time how that fancy acai bowl is betraying your brain. It sounds good, but it's doing you more harm than benefit. So next time you forget where you parked, maybe don't blame aging. Blame that smoothie that you just had. Next, we're going to explore how your blood sugar isn't just messing with your head, it's tanking your hormones and lighting your gut on fire. And yes, we'll explain how cortisol, testosterone, and your microbiome got caught in this metabolic soap opera. How glycemic variability feeds brain fog, anxiety, mood crashes, and is connected to type 3 diabetes, aka Alzheimer's. Those real-world constant glucose monitor insights will help us sharpen your mental performance, make you feel better, look better, and perform better. So now that we've talked about the upstairs brain on sugar, let's head downstairs to the real drama, the hormones and your gut. Think of this as the hormone soap opera, where blood sugar is both the unreliable narrator and the villain. So let's start with cortisol. Your main stress hormone, cortisol, naturally rises in the morning to wake you up. And then it tapers through the day down to 0 so that you can sleep at night. But if your glucose is crashing from that pastry plus latte breakfast combo, cortisol spikes again and again. Your body starts living in a glucose-fueled panic room. Chronically elevated cortisol from unstable blood sugar leads to poor sleep, fat gain, especially around the belly, impaired recovery, and ironically, more sugar cravings. Now throw in insulin resistance into the hormone stew. Insulin resistance blunts your sensitivity to key hormones like thyroid. This leads to a slower metabolism, cold hands, thinning of the outer third of your eyebrows, weight gain. It also interrupts testosterone, leading to fatigue, low motivation, muscle loss, loss of libido, and sex drive. It also messes with estrogen, leading to hot flashes, mood swings, gut symptoms in both men and women. We call it hormone whack-a-mole. Fix one symptom, another pops up. Until you deal with the underlying glucose volatility, you're just chasing symptoms. Meanwhile, your gut is also not enjoying the ride. High glucose and insulin swings feed dysbiosis, or imbalance between the good and unbeneficial bacteria. An imbalance in the gut microbiome leads to bloating, brain fog, and inflammation and autoimmune diseases. And remember, your gut houses more neurons than your spinal cord does. So when your microbiome is inflamed, it signals your brain with the equivalent of panicked texts at 2 a.m. Emergency, wake up, danger, Will Robinson. So it also increases intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut, which allows inflammatory compounds to enter into your bloodstream from the gut and create even more chaos systemically in your body. So here at Echelon Center for Longevity, we look at this triangle holistically. We test the blood sugar and the insulin. We test the hormones, including your diurnal cortisol and sex hormones. We run GI map stool tests to understand the microbial terrain. We don't chase after symptoms. We correct the upstream mess that's been created. One patient, 46, perimenopausal woman, came in with all the symptoms: fatigue, weight gain, bloating, anxiety. Labs showed cortisol dysregulation, mild insulin resistance, and bacterial overgrowth in the gut. So we stabilized her glucose, supported adrenal rhythms, treated her gut inflammation, rebalanced the microbiome, and the whole picture changed. Her sleep deepened, her energy stabilized, her cravings disappeared. She lost fat, she gained more muscle easily, and finally felt like herself again. And yes, she's still got to eat chocolate. She got to have that little bit of chocolate in the evening, just not on an empty stomach while yelling at her inbox. So I want to talk about the labs that we actually use to measure these issues. So why that normal A1C isn't giving you the full story. Cortisol, blood sugar, and sleep. Blood sugar's effect on thyroid, testosterone, and estrogen. How this destabilizes glucose and how that affects the microbiome and inflammation, because it's all tied together. So if you're only testing A1C and you're fasting glucose to elevate your metabolic health, that's like checking the weather by licking your finger and holding it in the air. Sure, A1C gives you an average blood sugar over the past 2 to 3 months, but it can hide huge glucose swings on the day-to-day and hour-by-hour basis. Fasting glucose, well, one number on one day felt under controlled conditions doesn't tell you what's happening when you eat, when you're stressed out, or when you skip a meal. That's why we dig deeper here at Echelon. Here's what we actually look at. Your fasting insulin and HOMA-IR or HOMA-IR. Fasting insulin tells us how hard your pancreas is working behind the scenes. And HOMA-IR is a calculation using fasting glucose and insulin. It tells us how insulin sensitive you are. So many patients with normal fasting glucose have sky high insulin, meaning resistance has already been brewing for some time. The constant glucose monitor, or CGM, is pretty much the gold standard for real life blood sugar data. It shows how high your sugar spikes after meals, how fast it drops, aka crash city. What is your overnight glucose doing? The one client I had normal labs, but his CGM revealed glucose spikes to 180 after a smoothie and then crashes to 65 2 hours later. No wonder he had these energy swings and additional cravings. Another test is fructosamine. This marker reflects average blood sugar over the past 2 to 3 weeks. It's a little shorter than A1C. It's great for spotting recent changes or validating short-term wins. Next, we look at triglycerides and your HDL ratio. What does your ratio look like? High triglycerides are often driven by insulin resistance. We aim for a TG-HDL ratio under 2.0 and ideally closer to 1.0. Next is C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein tells us, or CRP tells us about systemic inflammation throughout your body. Oxidized LDL shows us the kind of cholesterol that triggers plaque, often linked to blood sugar instability. So that's another one we want to look at is oxidized LDL. So all this data paints a much clearer picture than just a single, you're fine lab slip, A1C, right? So we here at Echelon Center for Longevity, we create a metabolic profile based on patterns, not just point in time labs, not just a snapshot in time. So we then match that data with your symptoms, your constant glucose monitor trends, and then looking at your goals. So every recommendation is precise. Now let's talk some tactics. So I don't want you to become a monk and giving up your social life. Fasting glucose, fasting insulin, HOMA-IR, glucose tolerance testing versus a constant glucose monitor, triglycerides, A1C, fructosamine, CRP, and oxidized LDL. Yeah, let's bring the science down to the kitchen counter. How does this all apply in a practical sense? Because when it comes to blood sugar control, the solutions are often refreshingly unsexy and wildly effective. So let's look at, just something simple as food timing and sequence. It's not just what you eat, it's when and in what order. Start meals with fiber or veggies first, protein and fats second, carbs very dead last. This slows down the glucose absorption. Just that one little tweak can make all the difference between that nice steady glucose rise or a huge spike. Next, try timing your carbs around activity. Post-exercise is prime time for improved insulin sensitivity. Eat within a very compressed window if tolerated. We often recommend, 10 to 12 hours of eating with a strong overnight fast. Ideally, you get to an intermittent fasting routine where you're only eating over an 8-hour window and you're fasting for 16 hours. You got to work up to that. One of our clients cut his post-lunch energy crash just by, reordering his meals. Broccoli first, rice last. Boom. No more crash, but more focus. You got to think about movement. Movement is medicine for your body. Walk for 10 to 20 minutes after a meal. Go get some steps in. It's way better than metformin in some studies. This has actually been studied. Going for a walk. Traditional Chinese medicine, 1,000 steps after every meal is equivalent to, taking the best longevity supplement or reishi mushroom that all of the emperors were searching for. Getting some steps in after a meal. It's great for insulin resistance, increasing your insulin sensitivity, and decreasing and stabilizing that blood sugar. What about resistance training? 2 to 4 times a week. Studies show that it improves your glucose uptake and reduces insulin resistance. So exercise is a non-negotiable. You've got to find a way to fit this into your longevity stack. Low-level movement throughout the day, standing, fidgeting, matters more than people think. There's a pro tip. Go for a walk while you're on a phone call after lunch. You'll lower your glucose and you'll clear your inbox at the same time. Sleep is a time when you should control that sugar. Poor sleep increases insulin resistance by up to 30% just after one night of poor sleep. Deep sleep is when metabolic hormones reset, so we protect it at all costs. Got to get that deep sleep. Optimize sleep environment, circadian rhythm, and cut out caffeine. No more caffeine after noon. It really does matter. 1 cup a day, and that's it. strategic supplementation based on your labs. We might recommend berberine, which is an insulin sensitizer. It's anti-inflammatory and it's a microbiome modulator. Myo-inositol, especially effective in polycystic ovarian syndrome and metabolic resistant, is a very effective supplement. Magnesium, critical for glucose transport and insulin sensitivity. Alpha lipoic acid, which is an antioxidant that supports mitochondrial glucose handling. We don't over supplement. We target what's needed based on labs and your constant glucose monitor data. So you also have to mind the stress. Elevated cortisol, chronic mental stress drives elevated glucose, even if you're eating perfectly. Stress management. You've got to do breath work. You've got to do meditation, get some sunlight, time in nature. This isn't fluff. It's biochemistry. We've had patients lower fasting glucose just by improving their parasympathetic tone, meaning they're getting out and they're getting de-stressed and they're actually lowering their stress level and increasing their heart rate variability. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is just get some stability in there. Stable glucose equals stable energy. Better brain function will come with it. Vascular protection, as well as hormone balance. You can't go wrong. And the best part, you can see the results in real time with a constant glucose monitor or within weeks of your labs. So, I want to just encourage you to get started with your own blood sugar clarity roadmap and how to avoid the biggest mistakes most people make when trying to cut sugar out of their diet. Food timing, walking, sleep optimization, gaining muscle mass, reducing insulin sensitivity. All of these things, can be helped with lifestyle changes, but certain supplements can also help, like we just talked about. If your blood sugar is spiking and crashing all day, how do you know? You need to get a CGM. It's worth the investment. Your arteries are quietly suffering otherwise. Even if your labs say you're fine, don't trust, verify. And also, go take the vascular age quiz at echelon-longevity.com/quiz to discover how your glucose habits might be accelerating your vascular age. What to do about it would be the next step, because healthy aging starts with stable blood sugar and healthy arteries. Let's get both of those dialed in. Next time on Unbreakable Vitality, we tackle the world of biological age testing, how to interpret your true age results, and what actually lowers your age score, and what most people get wrong about biohacking age reversal. I'll see you then.
If you're feeling like your energy, your edge, or your clarity just isn't what it used to be, you're not alone. But you're also not stuck. Every week on Unbreakable Vitality, we explore real strategies to reverse aging, reclaim vitality, and rewrite what's possible. If today's episode gave you even one insight, pass it on. Then go take the free vascular age quiz at echelon-longevity.com/quiz to see how your body's aging. Subscribe, leave a review, and follow us, because your future isn't on autopilot. You are building it and you're just getting started.